Mhm. Cool. So let's crack on. Welcome, Chaman, and whoever else is going to join later on. I am going to talk about NHS Consultant Interview today and why it's important for people who are sitting for their first NHS Consultant Interview. You need to know some very important bits about how to prepare for it, how to crack it in the first go, and what things to avoid. So the consultant interview is essentially a test not of what you know, but what you will be as a future colleague. So what they're essentially looking for or looking for in a consultant level person is fundamentally different from the other medical grades. So at this stage, the trust is not appointing someone who will rotate through different specialities or for a short period of time. They're looking for somebody who is going to be a long-term colleague and who is going to be a strategic asset for them. The expectation is that the selected candidate will kind of integrate very smoothly into the existing team and the wider trust structures. They would contribute to the high quality patient care. Also, they would take initiative to collaborate with the colleagues from different specialities, and they would also take an initiative in service development. So in essence, the consultant interview process, it's not simply about testing your clinical competence. It is also designed to explore your personality, your initiative, your awareness, and your motivation to actually step into that senior role. Um, it it kind of equalizes the balance between professional expertise and your personal attributes. So, what the panel in an NHS consultant interview is looking for is someone who can not only deliver excellent patient care, but could also seamlessly fit into the organization's culture. So when we talk about the NHS consultant interview, again, as any other interview, it has got a structured format. As far as possible, there is a preparation period which is needed for all kinds of interviews, especially specifically for the NHS consultant interview. You have to start thinking about it as soon as you think you're ready for the NHS consultant role. So the essential steps that would start before the interview day are then categorized into various types. Now, what people get wrong sometimes is either they are underprepared for it or they're over prepared for it, or they just don't get the timing right. And I'm going to speak about that in a bit. The interview structure is also pretty much different from all the resident doctor interviews or the other kind of low medical grade interviews that you would be sitting for during the entirety of your training or your specializing period. So we need to understand who all are sitting for the interview, who constitute the panel, what their roles are, what are their interests in this particular interview, and what are the expected questions that they are going to put forward for you. Then we'll talk in general about the common categories of questions that you can expect and how to formulate your answers, what to say and what not. Obviously, there is no hand holding or spoon feeding, and every person is different. So, all your answers are also going to be very individualized, very much dependent on your personality, very much dependent upon your confidence. And believe me or not, language has got nothing to do with how you fare in your interview. So even if you're not very strong in English or English is not your first language and you're still sitting for the NHS consultant interview, do not fear because they are not testing your English language capabilities. They are there to assess you as a person, what kind of person you are, how much confident are you, and how good a communicator you are. So they are just looking for somebody who is really genuine, really authentic, and who has gone through the experiences of various clinical and non-clinical things they're looking for and are able to articulate those experiences as exemplars for most of these questions that are asked. And obviously, towards the end, I'll tell you a little bit of tips and tricks about what to absolutely do and what not to do when you sit for the NHS consultant interviews. Now, what also sets an NHS consultant interview apart from the resident grade interviews is that they are expecting the incoming consultants to have a general idea about the workplace or the trust that they are applying for. So they are expecting you to do your due research before you actually apply for that post. And that will include studying the trust's values, the mission, and the recent developments. Most of these are available on either the job description or the or wherever you have applied. They would have a general overview of the trust values. They will have a general overview of the mission. You can also go into the intranet or the internet pages of the said trust that you're going to apply for and look for what their mission is, what their trust values are, what are the recent developments that are taking place, or you can just Google them through and you will know a lot about them. ChatGPT is a very good way of going about asking what the trust is like, what are the pros and cons, what are the general reviews, what kind of patients they are catering to, what are their values, what are the recent developments that have been there. So prepare yourself with those kind of information pertaining to the trust and the department that you're going to apply for. Again, if you are applying for a specific department, you should know who your colleagues are going to be, at least have a rough idea, at least know who the clinical lead, who the clinical director is, and what kind of departmental structure have they got. I think what helps quite a bit is paying an informal visit to the department and the trust or the hospital that you're going to go and work for, or the place that you're interviewing for. Just walking around, talking to people, visiting the department, asking around, what are the good and the bad things about the department, and whether people like working there, and what would they suggest you prepare yourself with when you're actually sitting there for that interview. Although not mandatory, it is always good to have an overview of the CQC report and the performance matrix, so you know that you are actually applying to a place that is maybe good enough for you. And if you're specifically looking for something, then that place should at least meet your expectations, first of all. Obviously, current challenges and improvement activities. So there might be trusts that are upgrading their hospital buildings or upgrading their infrastructure. There may be trusts that are expanding their departments, and those kind of things happening all around. So have a rough idea before you jump into the interview preparation about what all activities, what are the new things that are happening around the trust. Now, why do all this? Because that gives the impression that you have done your due diligence and you've done your homework before you actually applied for the interview and came there for the interview. And I think it also generally shows your enthusiasm and how excited you are about this post. And it is very important to have a good impression on the panel that is sat there for the interview. More often than not, one of their questions would try to suss out if you have actually read about the trust values and know what the trust is all about. Obviously, there are a few things that go into the preparation phase. As I said, there are people who will under-prepare for it. And by that, what I essentially mean is sometimes we think that they're going to ask a lot of questions, and it's such a broad thing to prepare for. We just become complacent and think, well, there's no point in preparing all of that because they could just ask anything. But I would suppose if you can filter down the questions to what is the most important, and instead of actually focusing on 100 questions, you just filter them down into broad categories and prepare for the categories instead of the actual questions, it becomes much easier to prepare your answers. Now, what happens if you're underprepared? Under preparation can sometimes lead to last minute cramming. So you would try and just learn the answers, and you just go there and parrot those answers verbatim, and that kind of takes away the personality from the answers. That makes it more scripted. And if there are any questions that are not pertaining to the answers that you have already prepared for, then you can be taken by surprise, and that might not be a very good thing for the entire interview. You would always have this urge of over preparing for an interview, but believe me, it is not needed at all. All you need is timing the preparation right. So do not under prepare, but then do not over prepare as well. Avoid the cognitive overload of going into a lot of courses before the interview, or doing a lot of research, or finding out a question bank and trying to cram all the answers. There is no perfect answer for any question that you would be asked in an NHS interview. What they're looking for is authenticity. What they're looking for is real life experience that you carry. And you can always practice it with a few examples, and you can always practice it with a speaking practice with your colleagues, your mentors, or just a mirror practice when you go for the interview. So sometimes candidates get this urge of preparing or rehearsing the answers, but of course, if the questions don't pertain to it, then you are thrown off balance. Sometimes you also then come across as really rigid, and really the answers seem very scripted. So try and avoid that. Um, Again, the myth that most people need to avoid when they're preparing for an NHS interview is that rattling through hundreds of random questions is not going to prepare you better than just having a few examples of everything, of all the various categories of questions that you can be asked for, and be prepared and be adaptable to then change those answers when they are asking you the questions from a different angle. The category of questions would still remain the same, and the answers will still remain the same. It will just need a little bit of tweaking to make sure that you're actually answering what you're asked. Now these are the general tips, the generic tips for preparing for an NHS consultant interview. When we talk about clinical questions, and that forms an integral part of NHS consultant interview as well, but they are not specifically going to ask you patient management based questions. There have been a couple of NHS consultant interviews that I sort of applied for, who were asking you to come in with, say, a 5-minute presentation prepared for, say, humanizing ICU, or something that was important for your department and something that was more recent or they were working on. So some of the interviewers can ask you to do that presentation in front of them when it comes to asking you about a clinical question. But it's always nice to have a good grip on your subject. Always nice to have at least a good grip on the specialty specific guidelines and protocols, especially what are the various things that are specific to that healthcare system that you're going to interview for. So in NHS, the most important guidelines that you'd be asked or come across is NICE guidelines or something pertaining to your department. You have to understand the local demographics. So if you're applying for an NHS consultant interview in a tertiary hospital, which is in an urban area, the population that they cater to is quite different from, say, a DGH, which is more rural and is catering to a completely different, say, aged population. Also, know a little bit about what your research, teaching, and academic opportunities are, and know about the MDT. So every team in the hospital is these days a multidisciplinary team. So have a rough idea about what kind of MDTs you have worked with, what were your takeaways from working with those MDTs, what have you learned, and how have you managed them. So have those kind of little concepts, little ideas, and little examples always ready. This is something that I absolutely love to talk about, and this is knowing yourself before you go for an interview. So, not just the NHS consultant interview, but this pertains to any kind of interview that you ever would sit for. But specifically for the NHS consultant interview, I think what they are looking for is somebody who knows the competencies that they have, who know their CV, who is able to then relay to the panel what all achievements they've had. They know what they're talking about, they know themselves inside out. So you should be able to not only take them through your CV and your portfolio and through your competencies and your achievements, but you should also be able to give them really specific examples of how you meet all their person specifications. So know what you have done in the past that you can now highlight for this particular interview. There will be times when there would be gaps in your CV. So always be ready to defend those gaps. And this is especially important for larger gaps that you have taken or career breaks that you have taken. Now, this could be because of n number of reasons. It could be personal reasons like maternity leaves or doctors going off work to raise their kids or for the earlier years of their kids' growth. It could be another personal reason that you did not get a job for a so and so period, or you were transitioning from one country to another, or you were, there could be n number of personal or professional reasons for it. And how you defend that gap is really essential, because you might be asked this question during your interview, that if you are showing a 3 year gap in your CV, what did you do during those 3 years? What were you doing to keep your commitment to the specialty? What were you doing keeping yourself updated about the recent advances? So you should be able to give them those examples. For example, if you've taken, say, a couple of years break because you were looking for a job, or you were moving to the UK, or you were doing your GMC thing, you should be able to tell them that while you were taking a break for those 2 years, you were actually working as locum, or you were doing something academic, or you were doing some research activities, or you were working part-time, or you were doing something online. So you should have a few of those examples ready if the question is ever put up to you, why you were not in an employment during that time, and how did you fill up that gap. You should also have some examples to cover up your weaker areas. So, for example, if you have not been into research, many of the IMGs that come from India, we do not get an opportunity to do research in our own countries. So that may appear as a weaker point, but you should be able to defend it by saying that although you haven't gotten opportunity so far, but you are looking forward to getting an opportunity and improving your research experience. So be the learner and show them that you are open to learning, you're open to opportunities, and give them a more positive approach to what the gaps and weaker points are, rather than taking it as something that you just never thought about. When it comes to competencies and other bits, you should have obviously a good grip on your portfolio. You should know what you are capable of doing, and also the things that you would want to improvise on or you would want to learn. If you can't explain these things to yourself when you are preparing or practicing for your interview, then it will be really difficult trying to come up with ideas and trying to explain it to, say, a panel of 8 people under that, NHS consultant interview pressure. Also know yourself. So what is going to make you stand apart from the rest of the candidates is how nicely you are able to present your personal attributes and how nicely you know yourself. So knowing yourself not just means your competencies or your professional, your career and professional things, but it also means that you know what your genuine strengths are. If you are a good leader, then you should be able to explain why. If you are a good teacher, you should be able to explain why. And this explanation is not supposed to be generic. It has to come with quite robust examples of what you've done so far in that field. So my tip from all of this, especially in the preparation phase, is that you need to prepare smart. It doesn't have to be very hard. It has to be very clear what you are planning to say, and it should show your self-awareness, your depth, your personal understanding of your own self. And it should have some sort of flexibility. Your answers should not come across as rigid, parroted, or pre-rehearsed. One of the most common, I think the commonest myth about medical interviews is that somehow success depends upon model answers. And this is something everybody had been asking me. So what are the model answers, or what is the perfect answer? And I keep telling them there is no perfect answer. What actually is going to make your answer more reliable, believable, and acceptable for the interview panel is how you deliver it, your personal attributes, how relevant it is to their question, how specific it is to their question. Does it come in with an example? And is that example actually drawn from your experience? So, this is how you will connect with your panel authentically and personally. And you don't have to hold back on feelings and emotions either. You can express it. If there is something that you're very passionate about and you are talking about it, show the passion. If there is an example that makes you sad, show the sadness. It's always okay to express how you're feeling while answering your questions, because ultimately they are looking for humans. They're not looking for robots to work in their unit. And now we come to what exactly the structure is for an NHS consultant interview. I think most of the NHS consultant interviews, whether they are locum interviews or substantive interviews, are usually 30 to 45 minutes, of which you'd get 5 to 10 minutes around clinical scenarios, 10 to 15 minutes about your leadership and management skills. Then talking about research, teaching, and other non-clinical activities would cover about 10 to 15 minutes. And then personal and professional attributes would usually be towards the end of the interview and would cover about 10 to 15 minutes. This is just a very vague structure, but it can vary between trusts. It can also vary between locum and substantive consultant interviews. Sometimes they may ask you to make a presentation. So they may ask you to come up with a presentation and present it to the panel during the interview. Some of the trusts do that quite frequently. So all of those things are crammed together in the 35, 40 minutes. Now, these 35, 40 minutes are absolutely focused on you. So try to make it all about you. Try to sell yourself in a way, market yourself in a way that comes across as somebody they would love to work with. Again, as I said, it has got nothing to do with your clinical competence, because that's just a very small part of the whole interview. It comes more about how you are as a person. They are constantly checking on how you're communicating during the interview. First impressions are really important, which we'll talk about towards the end, and how to create that proper first impression. And your preparation, show them that you've put in the work. The panel is usually an 8-person panel. It would include a lot of different people from the trust. I think the most commonly formed panel these days would include a chief executive of the trust or one of their representatives. It would have a medical director. It would have the clinical director for the department that you are going to join. It may have either the clinical lead or one of the senior consultants from your department as part of the team. It will have representation from GMC. These days, they are sending their representatives for all the substantive consultant interviews. They could have potential colleagues. It could be a senior nurse or a matron or a nurse specialist, somebody from an MDT team. It could often be an HR manager or a layperson or a patient representative, depending upon the trust that you're applying for. Talking about the various scenarios and the various clinical and non-clinical questions that you get asked, I think the more important things that you need to remember is how to structure the questions and what are the power words that you need to focus on when answering these questions. So when they're giving you a clinical scenario, they don't want you to parrot out guidelines. What they're looking for is clinical decision making. So how are you going to deal with this situation? Are you trying to keep patient safety paramount? Are you communicating enough with the family and colleague? And these are the three things that you should absolutely include in all your clinical answers. It could be a case-based discussion. It could be a practical scenario. Either ways, they're not looking for facts and figures. What they're looking for is your subjective assessment of the situation and how you're going to deal with it as a consultant. When it comes to management and leadership questions, again, the power words are quality improvement, teamwork, and service development. So all your examples when you're practicing for your interview should be around these components of management and leadership. So what initiative you took for a service development in your unit? Did you lead a quality improvement project? And if you did, what was it about? What was the aim for it? What was the motivation for it? How did you actually organize it? And then what was the outcome? What difference did it make to patient safety or your departmental services? So all of those things need to be structured in a way that comes across as practiced answers, but not scripted. Teaching and research, obviously, when you're stepping into a consultant role, a major part of your daily work is supervision and teaching. So you should be able to give them specific examples as to why you think you're a good teacher. Explain your educational experience, everything that you have done formally and informally before, how you have developed yourself as an educator for whatever number of years you have been working as a doctor. And if you've got any academic achievements, this is the time to highlight those. And personal and professional attributes. This is something that is quite important when it comes to a consultant interview, because in you, they are looking for somebody who can integrate with the team. If they think you are somebody who is very rigid, who is not flexible, who doesn't meet the criteria for their particular work environment, then that gives you minus points. So you need to show them that A, you are a motivated professional. B, your values align with the values of the trust or with the values of their department. And you should be able to show them aspirations, what you want to achieve from this particular role. What are your expectations from this particular role? Why you think you're ready for this particular role? So these are very behavioral and situational questions, and it's better to explain it with specific examples rather than going very general and generic. These are some examples of what common clinical questions are asked in consultant interviews. These are taken from real life examples of previous consultant interviews. So as a consultant, when you're stepping up from a registrar's role into a consultant role, I think the most important thing that changes is the level of your responsibility. And you need to put yourself in the shoe of a consultant, even if you're not a consultant yet. You need to imagine yourself as a consultant and how you are going to deal with these situations. Managing complex cases involving multiple specialities is basically boiling down to your communication skills. and how confident you are in managing a team. Handling a disagreement with a colleague, which is going to happen in real life ever so often. Again, you need to emphasize on professionalism, on a dialogue rather than a monologue, and how you would escalate this further, and who you will escalate it to, if at all. Breaking bad news to patients and families in the NHS, I think across the UK, it has become it is becoming the responsibility of the consultants to break bad news these days. Although at junior level, some of the resident doctors do it quite well, but the number of litigations and the number of legal issues that crop up, the complaints that crop up in the NHS, almost 70% of those complaints are around mishandling of communication, or non-communication or miscommunication. So to avoid those complaints from happening, if there are any complex family dynamics or any complex patients who are unable to be dealt with by your residents, you have to step in as a consultant, and how your communication will help mitigate those situations is really important. And you have to, when you are asked about these kind of questions, you have to use the power words like empathy, clear communication, providing support post a bad experience, follow-up care, things like duty of candor, things like uh, providing second opinions, organizing support, and all of those things. So I think breaking bad news or communication with complex families, patients, or colleagues is taken as a very common category of questions that is asked. And it's better you have some examples prepared for all the three categories if you're ever asked this question. Obviously, they will ask about your commitment to your specialty. So you should have some examples of, say, what conferences you attend on a regular basis, or are you involved in, revising guidelines in your trust, or are you involved in research or the kind of CPD activities that you do? Are you a faculty or an examiner anywhere in any of the various colleges or departments? Do you do regular assessment? Do you hold any formal roles like a clinical supervisor, an educational supervisor, or an appraiser for that matter? So have those examples always ready when you're answering these kind of questions, and don't keep them generic, is what I keep saying. Um, Management and leadership questions. So this is something that not many people are prepared for, but this is also something that you will be expected to answer properly, because you are stepping up in the hierarchy. You are stepping up into a senior leadership role, and whether you like it or not, you will be managing a lot of things. You will be managing a whole department. You will be managing the shop floor, which will include multidisciplinary team, patients, relatives of the patients, teams from outside, other specialities, your own juniors, your nursing staff, and lots of other people. So be prepared, be really prepared for these questions. Um, they can ask you things like, how would you improve patient floor waiting times in the department? This is very specific, especially for acute specialties like acute medicine or emergency medicine or intensive care. So what you need to prepare yourself with is, what is the current situation of that department? So you would do an analysis of what the current situation is, how many people are working, or how the current flows are. And then you need to engage the stakeholders, organize meetings, lead or chair meetings, figure out what the various opportunities and options are. And then you need to convert it into a plan of action and then try and implement that plan. So who all are the people that you will involve in this in this particular thing, and how are you going to then measure if your plan has actually worked? So those are the things they would want you to talk about. Again, some of you may not have had yourself in this situation before, and you would be, you would feel the urge to just generalize it. even if you're generalizing the answer, using these power words like stakeholder engagement or outcome measurement it gives you a better a better flow to your answer. If they're asking about a quality improvement project or any initiative or project that you've done for the betterment of the department or just improving patient care, you can use frameworks, and it's absolutely okay to practice with these frameworks as well. So STAR is a very commonly used framework. Spikes is another one which is used for breaking bad news. STAR framework is you will describe the situation or you will describe the project. What was the task? Why did you choose to do the project? And what did you do about it? And then what was the outcome of it? And how did it change the way things are? Keep it really simple. 4 sentences, and that should be it. You do not need to tell them long essays or stories, and that's perfectly fine. The other things that, again, crop up is conflict management. This is not something that you are taught, but then again, there are a few things that you can pick up as soft skills, which is active listening. So, listening to the concerns of whoever the conflict has arisen with, trying to mediate the conflict in a more neutral tone and a neutral way, trying to professionally do it and not get carried away in emotions, not to react to other people's emotions either, have some sort of emotional regulation within yourself, and then how to keep the team together if these kind of conflicts keep on arising. Sometimes, and this has been the case in the couple of interviews that I have faced, that they will ask you about your vision for the future. They can ask you how you can contribute to service improvement in the next 5 years. So in these situations, again, have a very broad overview of where the department actually stands and what their current challenges are, and then give them the solution to those challenges. For example, say if the department is facing a staffing crisis or if there is a problem with recruitment, then you can give them solutions like I would try and build up a plan where we'd be able to recruit more people, or we'd be able to retain more people, say by giving them opportunities to develop research projects, or maybe giving them opportunities to go through the portfolio pathway, or helping them with the CSER pathway and all of that. So I've kind of designed a few examples of how I would usually go about answering these very common questions, which are almost asked in all the NHS consultant interviews. So I myself am a critical care consultant, and therefore most of these answers are quite me. If asked by the interviewers to tell about myself, it's essentially they want a brief overview of where you are currently, where you have come from, what are your aspirations, and how do you fit the role. So I usually start with, I'm a current critical care consultant. I've got a background in anesthesia. My career has always focused on managing the very sick, the critically ill patients, giving them the best care possible, developing services within the intensive care department, and teaching the next generation of intensivists. Teaching is a passion for me anyway. I would just go on and talk a little bit about how I love working in dynamic teams and how I enjoy opportunistic teaching or bedside care. There is also a lot to talk about leadership and empowering people, how I would want to include the multidisciplinary team and how that would improve the workplace environment. And you can back it up with how you got good feedback from the people that you have worked with previously and how you've received excellent testimonials from them. Taking us through your CV. So again, they're not asking you to take them through your entire clinical, non-clinical, academic, and all the competency achievements. What they want from you is a really succinct summary of what you've done so far and where you're heading. So for me, it was after completion of my anesthetics and ICM training across tertiary centers. I have been focused into general intensive care, which is why I'm applying for a job in, say, DGH, which gives me quite versatile group of patients to deal with. Alongside clinical work, I have also got interested in clinical governance, teaching and supervision, quality improvement. I've led departmental audits, I've contributed to service development, and all of this has then prepared me for my consultant role. This is again another very common question that people will ask. This would usually be a senior exec who is going to ask you this question. Why do you want to join this trust, or why us? Again, if you have done your homework and if you know about the trust values, you can start by telling them that your personal values correlate with the trust values, and that makes it a very lucrative place to come and join. Also, you can then talk about their reputation in your departmental outcomes, how they are, if they're a teaching hospital or a university hospital, then you can obviously talk about their teaching culture. And if they are a smaller hospital and they've got expansion plans, then you can talk about that. Obviously, you will also want to show how you are able to contribute to all of this and what you are going to achieve from all of this, and why you think this trust is able to give you as much as it will expect from you. So you can talk about things like personal growth and professional growth while learning from an experienced consultant body. What makes you think that you're fit to become a consultant? This is a question usually asked for new consultants. So if you're setting up into your first consultant role, or if you've done your rotations and all the speciality rotations, and you've gone through your specialist training, and you are going for your first locum consultant job or a substantive consultant job in the same department or the same trust, or even in a different trust, you need to tell them how all these years of experience that you have accumulated has prepared you to then step up, and why now, how ready you feel to step up into that senior leadership role. So for me, it was gaining clinical maturity from all the experience, honing my decision-making skills and my leadership skills by managing complex cases as well as complex teams. And this can be backed up with the excellent feedback that I've received from my supervisors, from my previous employers, and that's why I feel ready to step up. This is something that most of the consultants are expected to have: communication skills. And this is not just clinical communication. It is a combination of both clinical communication as well as soft skills, because you will be dealing with a lot of conflict. You will be dealing with a lot of arguments, difficult families, difficult patients, difficult colleagues. So how you tailor your communication skills to meet the demands of those specific groups of people that you will be managing and leading is really important. And have some objectives for how your communication skills are. For me, it's a clear, simple communication, which is also adaptable. For other people, it could be I am polite in my communication, or I'm simple in my communication, or I try to avoid medical jargon, or I'm empathetic. So all the things that you are, it is the time to highlight all those things. It's a good way to also tell them what you have learned over the course of so many years of being clinical. So you actively listen, you confirm understanding of your patients, you provide information in a structured way. And of course, you can then back it up with you always get a good feedback from your juniors, from your supervisors, from the rest of the team that you work with. You get consistently good feedback from the patients and the families that you speak with. And what that feedback is, you can give a couple of examples of that as well. When it comes to teaching experience, again, I keep telling this and I keep repeating this, but have some specific examples ready. So you can say a generic answer like, I I teach the trainees, I supervise them for procedures, I'm engaged in simulation activities in the unit. But to go further in and to become more specific, you can tell them that, well, I have led a departmental teaching program, or I've helped in organizing seminars in the department, or I have been invited as faculty to various different societies to deliver talks. You can even give them an example of a specific talk that is close to your heart. So all those things, have those answers ready. And unless you practice those answers like really loudly, few days before the interview, the recall will get better the more you practice. Sometimes it is just a matter of the recall not happening at the right time during the interview under that pressure. But if you've practiced it, it will come back to you really quick. Um, Contribution to clinical governance and patient safety. Again, these are some power words that you would want to include in your answers, which includes leading audits, quality improvement projects, implementing protocols, following guidelines, making sure you're engaged in incident reporting and learning from them, reflective practice, and seeking feedback for everything. Mandatory training you need to be compliant with, and you should mention that you have been getting yearly appraisals and what your 360-degree feedback has been, and how you have progressed towards revalidation if you're new to the country. These days, and this has become really important post-COVID, to ask about well-being. And the team wants people that look after themselves. You can't really look after your patients well if you're not looking after yourself, especially in high stakes environment like ICU, A&E, or acute medicine, or even surgical fields. It is very important to be able to cope with the stress that you're going through on a regular basis. And you should be able to answer this question: how do you deal with stress? How do you make sure that you have got some sort of a work-life balance? How do you unwind after a bad day at work? These are the kind of questions that you get asked. And usually, the person who is asking these questions would either be somebody from the multidisciplinary team, like a nursing matron or somebody, or it could be HR. So be ready with your answer. What do you really do to counter stress after a bad day at work? So those were kind of the main categories of questions that you get asked. Sometimes these questions can come in different ways or can be asked in different angles. But essentially, the crux of it all is keep it personal, express emotions, keep it simple, and do not rattle. They don't want long stories. They just want to have like a really concise, a succinct summary of what you've been doing. They want to know everything that you've learned from your experiences. Okay. So I think before I end the session, I'll just give you a couple of really important do's and don'ts. First impressions matter. The people who are sat in that panel are really senior people, execs, and high grade managers. And you may not be able to meet those people very frequently, but your first impression will still matter. So reach on time, be punctual. If you are traveling to another city for the interview, make sure you reach there a day before. Make sure you've had a good night's sleep, a good breakfast, and are well hydrated. Make sure you've had some time to unwind. Make sure you are not under a lot of stress. It's okay to have nerves. It's okay to sit in front of them and take your time to formulate your answers. It's also very much okay to take a break or ask them for a glass of water or something of that sort. If you're feeling really nervous and if you're sweating, take a break. Don't rush into answering questions. Just take a break. They do understand. They do this on a regular basis. The panel members are very, very much okay. They would welcome you asking them for a break rather than the other way around. Essential to maintain eye contact. Now, remember, the panel members, however senior they may be, they're still adults. You're all adults sat in a room which looks like a high pressure environment, but it's all in your mind. And it's not as difficult as you would have thought because you've cooked up stories in your brain. You're all there having a conversation. You are telling them about your experiences. You have prepared yourself. So be confident in the way you portray yourself and ask questions. This is something not many people do, but they are expected to, especially when you're an NHS, when you're applying for an NHS consultant role. They want you to be proactive. They want you to show initiative. So if you've prepared yourself and if you know the department and the challenges that the department is facing, then you should be able to formulate certain questions at the end of the interview when they ask you, do you have any questions for us? Yes, I do. You can ask about things like what are the current challenges in the department's facing, or what are the research opportunities that are available? Is there any support for portfolio pathway if you wanted to take that? If you're a locum consultant, and those kind of questions, thoughtful questions. Do not ask about salary because they wouldn't be able to, answer about salaries and things. They may not be able to answer things like whether you would be helped with relocation, whether you'd get a relocation package, or whether they can arrange accommodation for you. Those are the questions that you can ask once you have been offered the job. So then you can, in the when you receive a feedback from them or when you receive an offer from them, you can get in touch with the HR and ask and clarify all those questions. Show enthusiasm, demonstrate that your values align with the NHS general values like honesty, integrity, compassion. And once you are done with the interview, that's not it. You need to get a feedback. Whether you're selected or not is another thing, but you should always formally ask for a feedback if they haven't already sent you a feedback via phone or email. It not only helps you prepare better for the next interview, it also tells you what the people's perception of you is and what are the things that you can actually work upon. It boosts your confidence as well. So ask for that feedback. Do not shy away from asking for a feedback post your interview. The absolute don'ts for a consultant interview, and for that matter, for any interview, you are a professional. So do not criticize your previous employers or colleagues. It goes against your values. Do not give generic answers. Have specific examples for everything. Do not interrupt the panel members. Always give enough time for them to ask you the question. Listen to the question actively. Take your time to formulate the answers and then give them simple and specific answers to everything. If you do not know about something, do not just go about saying, well, I don't know this or I haven't done this. Try avoiding negative words and try making it positive in a way that it comes across as you are somebody who is happy to learn. Come across as flexible, not inflexible. Do not carry your mobile with you, or if you're carrying your mobile with you, do not forget to silence your mobile. Any kind of distraction can just completely destroy your flow during an interview, and it also does not seem professional. Do not focus on your personal benefits only. Tell them what you are going to do for the department. Express how you are happy to be a part of the department, how, if given the opportunity to join that department, how you're going to give your all, and how it is going to eventually help you meet your aspirations for the future. And do not use medical jargon excessively. So some of the people who are sat there in your panel are not medical people. So keep your examples as simple and as layman language as possible. So these are the basic things. Final tips, again, take a moment to think. You show your leadership potential, and that's really, really important. Smile. You don't have to sit there like a robot, just parroting answers. You can smile, you can show confidence, you can move your hands, you can show an open body language, and all of that will really help. So remember my final words: confidence and preparation is equivalent to success. you have earned the right to be in that interview room, so show them why you are the right choice. If you would want to book a session with me, just get in touch. And that is it for today. Are there any questions for me at all?
Hi, Chami here. Can I ask a question?
Yes, please, go on.
So after we submit the CSER, is
Hmm.
it worth preparing for the interview or just wait? What would you recommend?
I would recommend starting the preparation once you have applied.
Once you applied.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I say this because sometimes what happens is you start your preparation now, but by the time you get the call for the interview, it will be months, and then all your preparation will just go to waste. So I think it's better to do it as closer to the interview as possible, but
Yeah.
again, don't leave it for the last day. So once you have applied, start preparing yourself and then wait for the shortlisting and things. So you would still get about 3 or 4 weeks in between to apply to prepare for it. I think that's the best time to prepare.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, so if there isn't anything else, then I'd stop here. Thank you very much for attending, Charmin and Shabana. See you later.
Okay. Thank you. See you later.
Bye.
Bye.